You're watching Cetome TV. Knowledge is power.
I would prefer to take this moment and just talk about one of the new therapies that I think is really important to breast cancer.
Oh, sure. You're the expert. Tell us what you think
Lisa,
we would most benefit
well, this directly
from knowing.
applies to Lisa too.
Okay.
So there's been a lot in the news recently about something called CDK4/6 inhibitors.
Okay.
They are referred to as estrogen inhibitor enhancers, although they probably work on multiple different levels. And they end with a lib on the end of them. So there's palbociclib, ribociclib, and abemaciclib.
Okay.
And so these are basically all different companies competing for the best drug.
And what did you say they are again? There's inhibit something?
So they're called CDK4/6 inhibitors.
Okay.
And that's just a process in the pathway of that's common with estrogen positive breast cancers.
Okay.
So what's really important about these drugs is they really make a huge difference in women with breast cancer. But Canada is really regulating them and making it very difficult for women to access these drugs. It's a real problem. Palbociclib, we started using palbociclib many years ago, and we use it with fulvestrant. And fulvestrant is another drug that's very important. It's a newer version estrogen inhibitor. And the important thing with fulvestrant is not that, so most estrogen inhibitors inhibit the production of estrogen. So they're called aromatase inhibitors. And aromatase is a pathway involved of creating estrogen molecules.
Okay. So
Other molecules.
most of those drugs try to reduce the amount of estrogen you have, basically.
Yes. Which is not necessarily the best way to go, because estrogen has positive and negative roles in the body. And that is because there's two different receptors for estrogen. There's what we call the estrogen alpha and the estrogen beta receptor. And so the estrogen alpha receptor causes things to grow fast. And this is what's overexpressed in your breasts during your menstruation cycle. And so estrogen beta is quite the opposite. It actually causes a reduction in proliferation and growth. And so estrogen triggers both of them.
Right. So you don't want to be taking them both out.
Exactly. One is actually cancer preventative, the estrogen beta, and one is cancer promotive, estrogen alpha. So fulvestrant is a great way of targeting this approach, because fulvestrant, instead of preventing the production of estrogen, what it actually does is it prevents the cancer signaling aspect. So in other words, the estrogen alpha pathway. And so what it does is it binds onto the estrogen alpha receptor on the outside of breast cancer cells, and it prevents estrogen from binding there. So it's like a steric inhibition. In other words, it binds onto the receptor, and estrogen now can't bind to that alpha receptor, but it still allows it to bind to the beta receptor. And so you get certain aspects of signaling.
Wow.
So fulvestrant, we've been using that for many years, and it's a great drug. So that works incredibly well with CDK4/6 inhibitors. And these CDK4/6 inhibitors are really changing the landscape of breast cancer treatment, both in advanced breast cancers and in starting out in early stage.
Right. So they're literally lifesavers.
But interestingly enough, they're different. So each drug has a completely different side of benefits and disadvantages. So the first one was palbociclib, and that was a great drug. It works very well, minimal side effects. And then they came out with a drug called ribociclib. So ribociclib works slightly different. It's from a different company, obviously, and but it works very well. But it also works in women who've already had palbociclib. So if they've had palbociclib, typically if you get a drug and then it stops working and then you go off it, you can't get it again. It's not going to work again, and that's kind of the general knowledge. But that's not necessarily the case with this class of drugs. So you could go off the drug, you can do some different drugs, and then you could come back to it and still get a benefit from it. And this is something that most doctors don't know.
And why is that?
We're not entirely sure. There's many different reasons. But what's important is you can actually cycle through these drugs. So you could start with palbociclib, and then if it stops working, then you could go to ribociclib, right? Now, the problem with ribociclib that the others don't have is it requires heart monitoring. So there can be, one of its side effects is on, certain aspects of how the heart functions.
Okay.
It's not that common, but you want to be monitored if you're on ribociclib. That's not necessarily as true with the palbociclib or the latest one, abemaciclib. Now, abemaciclib is the latest one, and it's the one that really works. It's one of my favorites. It has the least amount of research, but it's really a great drug because it's able to cross the blood-brain barrier. The other two drugs aren't able to cross the blood-brain barrier as well. They can, but not as well. And so,
what's the value of that?
Well, if you have brain metastasis, this drug can actually get into your brain and or your spine. A lot of women get spinal tumors and so on, causing back pain and so on. So, this drug can enter the CNS, the central nervous system, and it has great effects there. So, so that, and also because of the design of this drug, abemaciclib, you can take it every day. You don't have to take a break of it once a month. So palbociclib and ribociclib, you do, I believe, 21 days, and then you take a break, and then you go back on it. With abemaciclib, you can take it every day. And so that break that you have to take every month with the other two drugs is when the cancers are going to start growing back and metastasizing and taking over.
And with this most current one,
you're able to get a metronomic sequencing. And any drug that is given in a metronomic sequencing is going to work better than a drug that's given intermittently.
Right, because the cancer cells just don't have time to come back in the same way, right?
Yes.
So what you're saying is not only are there these new innovative treatments, but you can take one and then move on to the next and the next, and
exactly.
Essentially, you
can cycle back and forth with them,
for a good long time.
Well, it seems to be, It seems to be that you can actually go back to palbociclib after doing the abemaciclib and still get some minimal benefits. Not extensive, but it's a benefit. It's extra time. Now, there are interesting mutations that will benefit some of those drugs and inhibit some of those drugs. So, for example, if you have an RB1 mutation, very common in estrogen-positive breast cancers, it's a tumor suppressor gene. If you have that, then it reduces the benefits of palbociclib and ribociclib, but not abemaciclib.
Right.
So once again, this boils back to the importance of sequencing, getting tumor DNA sequencing, so you know which one of those drugs, and this is a classic example where you have three drugs that target the same pathway. They're all made by different drug companies, but different mutations will affect each one of those drugs differently. Some will benefit it, some will inhibit the benefits of it. So once again, regardless of what you're doing, even if you're doing the same class of drugs, you need to know what mutations you have. It's everything.
And then whomever is on your treatment team needs to be able to interpret that information and know. And
incorporate into your treatment plan. Hey, you have an RV1 mutation. You've been approved for a CDK4/6 inhibitor, but ribociclib and palbociclib are not going to work as well for you. You need to be on abemaciclib first.
Right.
So, or you have a brain metastasis, you need to be on abemaciclib. Or you don't have any of these, you can start off on palbociclib.
Right. So that genetic testing really is key.
And especially in these targeted therapies, yes.
Yes, right.
But I think what this really focuses on is that it's not just the mutations that the drug is targeting that you need to look at. It's the other mutations that may interfere with how that drug targets that mutation.
Right. Which is why the spot testing or just testing for BRCA1, for example.
Targeted sequencing.
Yes. Right. Okay.
Targeted
layperson language here.
Targeted mutation
All right.
testing.
Targeted mutation testing. So we're just picking one, like BRCA1, for example. While that it's better than nothing by all means to know, but there could be other genes that are going to influence how that works, or other genes that are more aggressive and influence how your treatment works.
Or that dictate that you need to add a second drug to increase the benefits of it. So, I think what we focus a lot on as a company, and we spend most of our time focusing on, anyone could tell you, hey, this drug for this mutation. Foundation One does that on its tests, but it does not tell you whether there's a mutation that you have here that will prevent that drug from working on that mutation. So the interacting mutations is everything.
Yeah, it's very complex.
And it gets very complex quickly, and you need a company like us that has experience in genetic signaling and cancer signaling to be able to determine what drug and what combination of drugs are going to be best for you.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah. This time is of the essence, and you don't want to get treatments that aren't going to be the best for you.
Definitely not.
That it often leads to increased side effects and again, just less effectiveness.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Was there anything else that you wanted us to know about breast cancer, whether prevention or treatment or things to look out for? I know there's
sequencing.
The topic is yes.
There's many things we could talk about, but we've run out of time.
Okay, so short answer. If you think you might have breast cancer, any type of cancer, a PET CT really is from a diagnostic speed and seeing with your own eyes whether you do or don't and where and how aggressive. That's really the best diagnostic tool for starters. And then if you do, then definitely you want to make sure that you get a genetic testing panel, not just like hundreds of genes looked at, not just one or two.
So for interacting mutations.
Right, covering all those bases. And then what we see so often when people have those genetic panel tests done is that they don't just have one or two mutations.
No, they have many.
For the vast majority of people have a handful, 20. We even had somebody recently who had 100.
Almost 300.
Almost 300 mutations.
Yes.
So, which interestingly enough, was a good thing for this person.
It is, because it indicates that they're going to get a high chance of responding to immunotherapy. And this is in a cancer that typically doesn't respond to immunotherapy. Neuroendocrine.
Yeah. So don't be thinking the more mutations, the worst, or I don't want to know because there's nothing that can be done. There's tons that can be done.
Yeah, the more mutations, the more opportunities.
Yeah, there's laws and new treatments being developed all the time. So even if there isn't the perfect treatment for you today, literally next month
could be next month. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching Ketome TV. Subscribe below and stay informed.